Chapter 50:16. When Madame Song saw this, she said, "What's done is done. There's no point in saying anything more. I'll send a message for Lingbo and the others to come back first. Let's go take a look at that woman in the guest house." As she spoke, she led a few people to the guest house. The next day, Madame Song only arrived at Fengzhou's courtyard to wait for her when it was close to noon. She had many things to ask her and could not sleep, so she came here to wait for her to wake up. When Fengzhou finished washing up and walked out of her room, she saw her sitting there. She walked over and said, "Good morning. Madame Xianyuan, I have some things to ask you, so I came early." After Madame Xianyuan sat down, she asked, "Madame Xianyuan, the people from the Song family left just like that. I think it's impossible for them to come and apologize. Not only that, they might even be angered and attack the Song family. What do you think? Before this matter is resolved, I won't leave. Don't worry." She smiled and took a sip of the tea in front of her. She smiled and said, "Didn't me mention my identity to you?" Madame Song was slightly taken aback when she heard this, but she shook her head. "Me didn't say anything. She only said that you were a very important friend of hers and asked me to treat you well." Listening to her words, could it be that she had some kind of shocking identity? She thought about the 3 children that Mi brought back this time. Those 3 children said that they were the Qing Emperor's disciples, and she was familiar with them. Could it be that Madame Xianyuan was acquainted with the Qing Emperor? At that moment, a few thoughts flashed through her mind, and she vaguely had some guesses. If she was an acquaintance of the Qing Emperor, and the kind that was close, it would explain why she looked down on a large family like the Qing family, and why she had the ability to cripple the elders of the Qing family. When she thought of this, she calmed down. She said, "Oh right, I went to the guest house last night. That girl was a young miss from a small family, but because of her beauty, Qing Wanli took a liking to her. Qing Wanli killed her entire family, leaving only her alive. He took her away." Speaking of this matter, she sighed softly and said, "That girl is also a pitiful person. Her body is also covered with large and small injuries. But according to her, because her injuries have not yet healed, Qing Wanli did not touch her. Until now, she is still a pure and innocent girl. When I came over, I told the servants to have her dress up. Later, she will come over and say that she wants to thank you in person." Madame Song paused, then continued speaking, "And I sent a message to Lingbo and his sons to ask them to come back early." Feng Zhou nodded. "Okay, I understand. As Madame Xianyuan, Miss Ke wishes to see you." Madame Song glanced at Feng Zhou, then said to the outside, "Let her in." Not long after, a woman in a plain white dress walked in from outside. When she entered, she glanced at the 2 of them, especially the woman in green with an ordinary appearance. Her gaze lingered on them for a while before she bowed to the 2 of them. Chapter 50:17. Fengzhou glanced at her and saw that after resting for a night, this woman's mental state was much better than last night. She was dressed in a plain white robe and there was only a small white flower in her hair. Her extremely beautiful face was accentuated by the sadness and worry between her brows. Coupled with her slightly pale complexion and her slender waist, one had to admit that this was a beauty that would make any man feel pity for her. It was no wonder that a lecherous person like Qing Wanli would exterminate her entire family for such a woman. It could only be said that beauty was a source of calamity. Sometimes, it was not necessarily a good thing for a woman to be born with a beautiful face. If a woman was born with a beautiful face but did not have powerful strength, not only would she bring disaster to herself, she would even implicate her family. She herself was a peerless beauty, and her appearance had brought her many troubles. However, she had resolved them all. As for the woman in front of her, she had such a beautiful face but did not have powerful backing or strength. It was not strange that she would be targeted by a lecherous person. How did you get targeted by Qing Wanli? Fengzhou gently scraped the tea as he asked casually. He did not allow her to get up and allowed her to continue kneeling. It was because one day when I went out, I was stopped by him. However, I did not expect that he would dare to enter my home at night and take advantage of the darkness to slaughter my entire family of over 100 people. When Kumeng spoke of this, her eyes were filled with hatred. However, when she thought of what Madame Song had said last night, she took a deep breath and suppressed the hatred in her heart. I thought that I would not be able to escape from his evil hands, but I did not expect that Madame would save me. Madame's great kindness, Kumeng has no way of repaying her, I can only. Before she could finish, she was interrupted by Fengzhou. That's enough. Fengzhou placed the lid back on the teacup and looked at the kneeling Kumeng, saying, "You may leave." Kumeng was slightly startled. She couldn't help but raise her head to look at her. She quickly lowered her head and responded, "Yes, Kumeng will take her leave." As she spoke, she stood up, bent her knees, and bowed to them before leaving. Madame Song had been quietly watching from the side. When she saw that Madame Xianyuan had chased her out, she smiled and said, "Madame Xianyuan, do you not like her?" Fengzhou smiled and looked at her. "She's just a stranger to me. There's nothing to like or dislike about." She paused for a moment before asking, "How does Madame Song plan to arrange her?" When Madame Song heard her words, a gentle smile appeared on her face. She said softly, "She's still injured. Once she recovers, let her leave." That's good." Fengzhou nodded. She was satisfied with Madame Song's arrangement. Furthermore, the fact that she was able to make such an arrangement showed that she was a thoughtful person. In the Song manor, Song Lingbo was in the prime of his life and his 3 sons were all adults. It was not a wise decision to keep such a beautiful woman in the manor. Letting her leave was the best arrangement. Meanwhile, Kumeng, who had returned to the guest courtyard, sat in front of the mirror in her room and stared blankly. She was no longer a rich young lady. Her entire family had been wiped out. She was now a homeless and lonely woman. Moreover, she was an extremely beautiful woman. Chapter 50:18. Could this be considered her family's revenge? Then where should she go from here on out? With such a face, she was afraid that she would be targeted by lecherous men if she walked out. She lifted her hand and gently caressed her beautiful face. Her brows were slightly furrowed with a tinge of sorrow. She looked so lovely and moving. "What should I do?" she muttered softly. At the same time, Song Lingbo and the others in the forest were all overjoyed. They had found many good things in this area yesterday and even hunted a few high-level ferocious beasts. They had been busy the whole night and were only able to sit down and rest now that they were done. "Father, something happened at home. Mother wants us to go back quickly." The second son of the Song family put the ingredients he had picked into his spatial ring. Only then did he notice the message from the communication jade and immediately reported it to his father. "We also received the message from Mother. She wants us to go back quickly," the third and eldest sons of the Song family said together. Song Lingbo's heart sank after hearing their words. He asked, "Did your mother say what happened?" As he spoke, he took out his communication jade from his spatial ring to listen. "She didn't say in detail. She just wants us to go back quickly." The few of them shook their heads. Song Lingbo listened to the message on the communication jade. It was indeed as they said. He immediately shouted to everyone, "Get ready and return to the city quickly." Songmi, Hao, and the other 2 had just come back from washing their faces. They heard their conversation before they even got close. They looked at each other and quickly ran over. Father, did Mother say what happened? Songmi asked. She only said that something happened at home. I'm afraid it's not a small matter. Otherwise, your mother wouldn't have sent us a message. Song Lingbo frowned. He was worried about the situation at home, so he ordered everyone to get ready quickly. He didn't have time to rest and was about to return to the city. Songmi hurriedly took out her communication jade from her space ring. Unlike her three brothers and father, her communication jade said that something had happened at home. However, her friend, Madame Xianyuan, had helped out. She even asked about Madame Xuanyuan's background. Madame Xianyuan. That friend you're talking about? Song Lingbo asked Songmi after hearing the message on the communication jade. Oh, yes, that's her. Mi was stunned for a moment before she nodded and said, Father, brother, don't worry. With Madame Xianyuan in our family, nothing will happen to our family. Her master was very powerful. With her as a guest in her house, even if something really happened, she wouldn't sit idly by. Song Lingbo frowned and asked, Who is that Madame Xianyuan? How do you know that nothing will happen with her around? Where did she come from? How could he be so capable? Even the elders of the Song family couldn't handle it, but she did. Father, this Madame Xianyuan is amazing. She said mysteriously, then smiled and said, But since she's here, and we've gained a lot during this time, let's go home. But don't worry, everything will be fine. Hao and the other two nodded at the side, expressing their agreement. With their mother around, who would dare to cause trouble for the Song family? Wasn't he tired of living? Chapter 50-19. Yes. The elite guards replied in a low voice. The three of you will ride on one sword. One of you will focus on flying on the sword while the other two will prepare for battle. Ihong, you will protect me, and the three children in the middle. I will lead the way. The elite guards will protect the surroundings with their swords. Don't get caught up in battle. Our main goal is to get out of the forest. Do you all understand? Song Lingbo shouted in a low voice. His voice was sonorous and powerful. In an instant, it stirred up the spirits of the elite guards. They were all prepared for battle. Understood. The crowd responded immediately. They quickly arranged themselves into a formation and followed him on their swords. They flew directly from the dense forest, past the towering trees, and flew directly into the air. Although Hao and the other two wanted to say that they could also fight and did not need their protection, they did not say anything when they saw the serious expressions of the Song family members. Knowing that something had happened at home, they were probably anxious to return home. However, the more anxious they were, the more likely something would happen. Hao and the other two followed the three brothers of the Song family separately. They were surrounded by elite guards and Song Lingbo was leading the way. After flying for a distance, there was no problem. However, not long after, they heard a shrill sound from the sky. It's the spirit-eater birds. Everyone, be careful. An elite guard shouted and instantly tensed up. Hao looked back and saw a flock of spirit-eater birds flapping their wings and shrieking as they flew towards them. There were so many of them that they looked like a black mass. Song Lingbo also saw the flock of spirit-eater birds. When he saw that there were so many of them, his heart sank. The sword in his hand turned and his spiritual power surged. Suddenly, he raised his chi and heavily slashed towards the flock of spirit-eater birds. Ha! With a low shout, the aura of the sword was also released. The spiritual power and the aura of the sword converged to form a huge sword that was visible to the naked eye. With a whistling sound, it slashed towards the flock of spirit-eater birds. Whoosh! The moment the aura of the sword was released, the flock of spirit-eater birds were also scattered. Most of them flew to the left and right to avoid the attack. Only a few could not dodge in time and were chopped to death. With a shriek, they fell into the forest. Pu. The flock of spirit-devouring birds was getting closer and closer, and the sound of their wings flapping became clearer and clearer as they flew closer. Because of the split of the saber, the flock of spirit-devouring birds rushed forward again, surrounding them from all directions. Using their huge claws and beaks, they attacked and tore at them. Ha! You're courting death. The elite guards shouted, and the swords in their hands struck out at this moment, towards those spirit-devouring birds that were flying towards them. Because Hao, and the others were protected in the middle, even if the spirit-devouring birds approached and attacked, they were unable to directly attack the few people in the middle. Hiss! Chaotic screeches could be heard, and bird feathers could be faintly seen falling down. The three Song brothers and me protected Hao, and the other two. However, when they saw that they were unable to attack from their surroundings, some of them knew how to fly to a high place and dive down from above. Kill! Song Lingbo shouted and flew into the air. With a horizontal slash of his saber, he sent a spirit-devouring bird flying. The sharp saber in his hand turned again, and he slashed towards the surrounding spirit-devouring birds. Even though they weren't weak and their fighting strength was strong, many of them were injured under such a dense barrage of attacks. Scratches of various sizes could be seen on their bodies. Some looked like they were scratched by the claws of the birds, while others looked like they were bitten by the beaks of the birds. Chapter 50-20. However, Song Lingbo's strength was indeed very strong. In addition, the strength of the elite guards he brought along this time were first class. Although they were injured, it was not fatal. After a fierce battle, those spirit-devouring birds did not continue to pester them, and they continued to move forward with injuries. The next day, when the city gate opened, they went to Song family. Because it was still early, there were not many people on the street. Although this was the case, when they saw the group of people coming back with injuries and looking travel-worn, they were still surprised for a long time. Hao, and Mu-Chin followed the group of people and Yu, was sleeping on Mi's back. Knocking on the door, Song Lingbo walked in with large strides and said to the people behind him, "Elite guards, go and rest first. Ihong, you three also go and wash up before coming back. Treat the injuries on your body a little so that your mother won't worry. Me, take the three children back to the courtyard to sleep." Okay. Everyone responded and watched him walk in with large strides, then left. When Song Lingbo returned to the main courtyard, Madame Song had not yet woken up. When the door was gently pushed open, Song Lingbo walked in with light steps. As he entered the room, a cold wind blew in. Madame Song on the bed was startled and instantly opened her eyes and sat up. Phew. Ever since that night, she could not sleep well at night because she was always worried that someone would break in. "Madam, it's me," Song Lingbo said and strode to the side of the bed. Hearing the familiar voice, Madame Song's worried heart relaxed. She opened the bed curtain and looked at the person who came. Seeing him like that, she couldn't help but be startled. She hurriedly got up and asked, "Why is there so much blood? Where are you hurt?" Her hands grabbed his arm and looked up and down, but she couldn't see where the wound was. "It's nothing, it's not my blood. It's the blood of some fierce beasts. We came back in a hurry and didn't have time to change clothes and clean up," he hurriedly comforted. That's good, that's good. That's right, how are Ihong and the others? And the three children? Are they all okay?" she asked again. "They're all fine. Don't worry. It's just that the elite guards suffered some injuries, but they're not fatal. We just came back." I'll let Ihong and the others wash up first before coming back. I'll let me take the 3 children to rest in the courtyard. Song Lingbo said as he led her to the table and sat down. He asked, Madam, what happened at home? Are you frightened? Just now, when he entered the room, he had clearly lightened his footsteps. If it was in the past, she would not have been startled awake in that instant, but just now, she was suddenly startled awake. Madame Song continued, You don't know this, but a man named Xing Wanli came with his entourage and 4 elders. He said that he was an old friend of yours and wanted to visit you. He beat up the gatekeeper as soon as he arrived. The elders stepped in and said that the Qing family was a big family in Longnan. Since they were old friends with you, it would be unreasonable for us to refuse them. Chapter 50-21. Damn it! Song Lingbo was enraged. He slammed his fist on the table with a loud bang. Even the teacups on the table made a crisp sound. Madame Song held his hand and whispered, Don't be angry. Listen to me. He took a deep breath and held her hand. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he said, Tell me. Fortunately, Madame Xianyuan appeared and saved me. If not for her, the consequences would have been unimaginable. She continued, She crippled Qing Wanli's cultivation and forced him to reveal his purpose for coming to our house. That was when I found out that he came for the Rainbow Spirit Stone. As for me, I was lustful. That night that she recounted the events of that night in detail. Finally, she said, That's what happened. At that time, other than what Madame Xianyuan did, I really couldn't think of any better way. I was just worried that the Qing family would seek revenge, so I hurriedly sent a message to you to come back. Song Lingbo let out a deep breath when he heard that. He felt a wave of lingering fear and said, Fortunately, you're fine, and fortunately, Madame Xianyuan is in our estate. Madam, come with me later. I want to personally greet Madame Xianyuan and thank her. Okay, I'll get someone to prepare a bath for you first. Madame Song said as she stood up. She went to the bedside to get a coat and put it on. Then, she went to the door and gave an order. On the other side, in the guest house, was sending Hao, and the other 2 back. She heard from the housekeeper that Madame Xianyuan lived in the courtyard where the 3 children were staying. When she arrived at the courtyard, she dismissed the servants and saw the 3 children running inside. Just as she was about to knock on the door, Hao paused and said in a low voice, Why don't we bathe and change first before coming to see Mother? Let Mother sleep a little longer. Mu Qin saw that it was still early and remembered that his mother liked to sleep in. He nodded in agreement. Okay, let Mother sleep a little longer. Yes, yes. Let's change into clean and beautiful clothes before coming to see Mother. When Yu entered the residence, she woke up. Her little face still had sleepiness. At this time, hearing the words of her 2 elder brothers, she also expressed her approval. When heard their conversation, she gave some instructions to the servant girl outside the courtyard. She then walked towards them and said softly, Then I'll go back first. I'll come back later. I've already asked the servant girl to prepare hot water for your bath. If there's anything you need, just let the servant girl arrange it. All right. The 3 of them replied. After watching her leave, they returned to their respective rooms. With Fingzhou's cultivation, how could she not know that the 3 people were whispering outside the door? Hearing their voices and knowing that they were back, she opened her eyes with a smile and yawned. Thinking that the 3 little guys had said that they wanted to take a bath and change clothes first, she was not in a hurry to get up. After lying on the bed for a while, she got up and washed up. After leaving the room, he instructed the maidservant to have the kitchen prepare some food. He raised his hand and set up a soundproof barrier in the courtyard. Then, he sat in the courtyard and waited for the three children to come out of the room. Mother. Mu Chen was the first to leave the room. As soon as he stepped out of the room, he saw his mother sitting by the stone table in the courtyard. He immediately ran towards her. Chapter 50-22. After not seeing him for a period of time, seeing that he had grown a little taller, she couldn't help but smile. She picked him up and sat him on her lap. Looking at the little guy's blushing face, she couldn't help but laugh. What's wrong? Mother is holding you and you're still shy. She deliberately teased him and reached out her hand to gently tap his nose. Mother, I'm a boy, I can't always let mother hug me. He tried hard to keep a straight face, but that slightly upturned mouth couldn't conceal the joy in his heart. It's okay, even if you're a boy, you're also mother's precious son. Mother can not only hug you, but also kiss you. Saying that, she kissed his little face. Seeing that her son's ears were red, she couldn't help but chuckle. Son, who do you take after to be so shy? She asked in amusement. Mu Chen blushed with a trace of embarrassment, but his eyes were full of joy. Thinking for a bit, he said, like father. Hearing this, Fengjiu laughed and nodded in agreement. Yes, like your father. Thinking of that year, your father was kissed by mother, and he was so excited that he fainted. Speaking of this matter, she couldn't help but laugh. Mother! Mother! Two joyful voices came at the same time, and at the same time when the door opened, Hao and Yu trotted towards her. Mother, mother, I missed you so much. Yu was a girl, so she was the best at acting spoiled. She threw herself into her mother's embrace and rubbed against it. Mother. Hao acted like an elder brother and came to her side and called. Sit down. Tell mother, how have you been outside during this period of time? Fengjiu put Mu Chen down and let him sit down beside her. She also hinted Hao to sit down. Yu squeezed into her mother's embrace and sat on her lap, hugging her tightly with both hands. Regarding this, Fengjiu could only feel helpless. She lovingly smiled and reached out to touch her still somewhat wet hair, saying, Sit properly, mother will help you dry your hair a bit. It's easy to get sick like this, you know. I heard mother talking with brother, so I hastily dried my hair and ran out. Yu said and sat properly without moving. Fengjiu used her spiritual power to help her dry her hair, then helped her tie her hair again, then hugged her. When she hugged her soft daughter, she raised her eyebrows. Lowering her head to look, she said with a smile, Yu, did you gain weight again? Hugging her soft and fleshy body, her weight had also increased by a lot. Yu looked at her with a beaming smile, then somewhat bashfully buried her head in her mother's bosom, and said, Mother, the food cooked by big sister Mi's family is truly delicious, moreover her brothers will also cook delicious and beautiful things for us. And mother knows, so you have to raise yourself well.
Yu knows. She hurriedly nodded. How, did you have any harvest when you went out with Song family? Fengjiu looked at Hao, sitting beside her and asked.
Chapter 50-23. Fengjiu listened to Hao talking, and not long after, Yu interjected a few words, and Mu Chen also opened his mouth to speak. Listening to the three children talking about the interesting things inside and the return journey, she nodded her head and praised, You all did very well. Hearing their mother's words of praise, the three children looked at each other and laughed at the same time. The maid came over with breakfast, but because she saw the boundary of the courtyard, she didn't enter, but stood at the entrance of the courtyard and waited. After seeing this, Fengjiu said a few words to the three children, then removed the boundary, and let the maid bring in the food. You all came back so early, you must be hungry, quickly eat. After eating, if you are tired, go back to your room and sleep. Fengjiu said to the three children. Okay. The three children answered and accompanied her to eat breakfast. After eating breakfast, Fengjiu accompanied the three children to walk in the courtyard to digest the food, then let them go back to their room to sleep for a while, and wait until noon. She will take them out to play. When the three children heard that she will take them out to play, they immediately agreed and returned to their room to sleep. Not long after the three children returned to their room, Song came over. When she entered the courtyard and saw that she was alone, she stepped forward and called, "Master, where are the three of them? I let them sleep for a while to make up for their sleep, and at noon, I will take them out to play." Fengjiu said with a smile, sitting by the table and drinking tea. "Then I will take you out at noon, I am familiar with this city." Saying this, said, "Master, I went to my mother's place, and I also know about the matter in my family. This time, I really have to thank you, my father and mother are behind me. They said that they will personally come to thank you." "That's right, my father has been asking about your identity, but I didn't say." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and said, "I originally planned to return to the island when you returned, but now that your family is in trouble, and most likely because of me, I can't leave until the matter with the Qing clan is resolved. So, we will continue to stay here for the time being. It won't be too late to leave after the matter with the Qing clan is resolved." Song was taken aback. Would the Qing family dare to seek revenge? Didn't they say that the cultivation of those four old men with strong cultivations was crippled by Master? If the Qing clan's clan head knows about this, he probably won't come to seek revenge, right? After all, to be able to cripple the cultivation of those four people, his strength was naturally not weak. The Qing clan did not want to take the risk of offending him again. Fengjiu chuckled and toyed with the teacup in his hand. "You don't understand. There are some people who, even if you have the intention to let them go, they still insist on walking down the path of death. What will the Qing family do? I don't know, but I believe that we will know soon enough." Hearing this, Song didn't say anything else because she saw that her father and mother had arrived. She immediately said, "Master, my father, mother, and my three older brothers are here." As she spoke, she walked towards them. Ever since Song Lingbo entered the courtyard, he had been sizing up the lady in green who was sitting there drinking tea. Her green robes were simple yet elegant, and her appearance was ordinary. She was the kind of person who would be forgotten with a single glance. However, as she sat there, the calmness she exuded was inexplicable, and no one dared to underestimate her. Based on his experience of reading countless people, he could tell at a glance that this person was a powerhouse who had hidden his strength. Chapter 50-24. "You don't have to be so polite," Fengjiu said and gestured, "Please sit." Song Lingbo and his wife sat down at the stone table. Mrs. Song said, "Mrs. Xianyuan, these three are Mir's three brothers." Then, she looked at the three. The three of them understood and stepped forward to bow. Song Yihong. Song Yiming. Song Yifan, nice to meet you, Mrs. Xianyuan, the three said at the same time and bowed respectfully. "I've always heard mention the three of you. Madam Song, you're truly blessed to be able to meet you today." Feng Jiu smiled as she looked at Madam Song. Hearing this, Madam Song couldn't help but smile. She looked at the children with gratification and joy in her eyes, but she still smiled modestly and said, "You're too kind. Don't judge them by their looks. They're usually troublesome. Mrs. Xianyuan, I've heard from my wife about what happened in the house. This time, it's all thanks to you. I, Song Lingbo, am very grateful." Song Lingbo stood up and said. This time, he bowed deeply to her. Seeing this, Fengjiu said, "This is Mir's home. I happen to be here as well. It's not a big deal. Mrs. Xianyuan, you saved my wife and solved the crisis of the Song family. To you, it's not a big deal, but to the Song family, it's a big deal. Song Lingbo looked at her and said, with Madame Xuanyuan's ability, I don't think I can do anything for Madame. I can only personally cook for Madame Xianyuan while Madame Xianyuan is staying in my residence to thank Madame Xianyuan. Hearing this, Feng Jiu laughed and said, if it's anything else, I really don't need it. However, I am a person who loves delicious food. I am very honored to have Chef God Song personally cook for me. Is that so? Didn't I say that if father wants to repay me, it would be best for you to personally cook? Me, who was at the side, winked at her father and said with a smile. Yes, you're the smartest. Mrs. Song chuckled as she glared at her daughter. Madame Xianyuan, I have something to ask you today. Song Lingbo's gaze fell on her as he spoke. Seeing this, Fengzhou smiled and said, you want to know who I am? Song Lingbo nodded and said seriously, that's right. I'm very curious about Madame Xuanyuan's identity. Other than that, I'm also worried that the Qing clan won't let this matter rest. Therefore, I hope that Madame Xianyuan can tell me her identity so that I can be mentally prepared. He wanted to know her identity for two reasons. Firstly, he was curious. Secondly, he was worried that the Qing clan would come again. When that time came, the Song clan would be strong. He knew very well what kind of fighting power the Song clan had. Even if they were a big clan, they would definitely not be able to fight against a clan like the Qing clan. Therefore, he had to know her identity before he could make arrangements. Fengzhou smiled and looked at Song Lingbo and Mrs. Song. He said slowly, my name is Fengzhou. Fengzhou. Mrs. Song was stunned. Hearing this name, she was confused. Song Lingbo was shocked. His eyes widened in disbelief and he stood up. He could not hide the shock on his face. You are. Waves of shock surged in his heart. He could not believe it. Fengzhou. Chapter 50-25. He couldn't help but look at Mir and ask, Mir, is she really? Yes, it's the one that father guessed. Song Mir nodded with a smile. Hearing this, Song Lingbo was about to kneel down and salute Feng Nine as he said, Song Lingbo was blind. I didn't know. He wanted to kneel down but found that he couldn't. It was as if there was an invisible force holding him and preventing him from kneeling. He looked up and saw Fengzhou smiling. Master Song, you don't have to do this. I didn't want to disturb anyone. Yes. He quickly nodded and stood up, not daring to sit at the same table with her. Empress Phoenix Master. She was the most powerful being in the world. People like them had only heard about her. Never did they expect to see her in person, and in their home. Suddenly, he felt a bit dizzy, as if it was all unreal. When the three sons of the Song family heard that name, they vaguely felt that they had heard it somewhere before, but they couldn't remember where. Seeing their father's shocked and excited expression, they couldn't help but look at each other with a surprised expression. Song Yifan waved at Mir, and the three of them went to a corner and whispered. Mir, who is Lady Xianyuan? Why does father look so shocked when he hears the name Fengzhou? I think I've heard the name before, but I can't remember. Who is she? Song Yifan asked in a low voice. The other two also looked at Mir, waiting for her answer. You don't know. Song Mir blinked her eyes. There was a hint of surprise in her voice. She looked them up and down and said, Who told you to bury yourselves in researching new dishes at home? You don't know what's going on outside. Mir, tell us. What do you want to eat? I'll make it for you. Hearing this, Song Mi grinned. Seeing how anxious they were, she couldn't help but find it funny. She said, I won't say it, I won't say it. Later, you guys can ask father yourselves. However, what you heard here, just let us know. Don't let anyone else know, especially the name Phone 9. Don't mention it in front of anyone else. Why is that? The three of them couldn't help but look at Lady Xianyuan, who was talking to their parents. Just listen to me and you won't go wrong. She said with a smile and didn't say anything more to them. She skipped over to her parents' side. Song Lingbo and the others chatted with Fengjiu for a while and then left. After Mi saw them leave, she came to Fengjiu's side and said with a smile, Mistress, you didn't want anyone to know your identity when you disguised yourself this time. Why did you tell my father? The Song family is so much weaker than the Qing family. If I didn't tell your father who I am, do you think he would feel at ease? Fengjiu raised an eyebrow and glanced at her. You, on the other hand, seem happy to see your father scared by my identity. Chapter 50-26. Okay, Fengjiu replied with a smile. On the other side, when Song Lingbo returned to the main courtyard and sat down on a chair in his room, he could not help but exhale softly. He leaned against the chair and did not speak for a long time. However, his eyes shone with an excited light, and his expression was somewhat indescribable. Seeing him like this, Mrs. Song couldn't help but worry, Darling, are you okay? Ever since he heard that Mrs. Xuanyuan's name was Fengjiu, he had been acting weird. Now that he was back in his room, he was sitting there in a daze. Song Yihong and the other two looked at each other and asked, Dad, who is this Fengjiu? Why did you? Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Song Lingbo, who was sitting down, suddenly stand up. Song Lingbo gestured for him to keep quiet and strode outside. When he arrived at the door and saw that there were no servants in the courtyard, he closed the door and set up a soundproof enchantment. All of them were stunned when they saw this, and their expressions couldn't help but become serious. We have an important guest. This is Mrs. Xianyuan. She is incredible. When he mentioned this, he could not hide the excitement on his face. He said, Fengjiu is the name of the Empress Phoenix Master. It can't be wrong. Madame Xianyuan is the Empress Phoenix Master. She's also the Phoenix Master who killed the Northern Flame Emperor not long after ascending. Hearing this, Song Yifan slapped his thigh and said excitedly, I was wondering why this name sounded so familiar. She is the Empress Phoenix Master. However, I've heard that the Phoenix Master likes to wear red clothes, and her beauty is unparalleled. The one in our house looks very ordinary. Could it be a mistake? Or is it just the same name? Yes. She is a legendary figure. How could she be a guest in our house? Dad, could it be that she has the same name? Song Yihong said. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that such an unreachable figure would come to their house. It can't be wrong. It must be her. Song Lingbo said with certainty, think about it, if it wasn't for her, who else would have the ability to cripple the cultivation of the four elders of the Qing family? If it wasn't her, who would dare to look down on the Qing family like she did? Furthermore, Mi also said that it was her. There's no mistake. Mrs. Song heard this and asked, so, as long as she is in our house, even if the Qing family comes for revenge, we don't have to worry. Let's not talk about one Qing clan. Even if 10 Qing clans came, as long as she was in our residence, we would have no worries. Song Lingbo said. At this moment, it could be said that he was completely relieved. Originally, he wanted to send out invitations to those experts who were on good terms with him to come and help him. He didn't expect that there would be no need for that now. With Fengjiu in their house, they wouldn't have to worry even if there were 10 Qing families. That's good, that's good. Only then did Madame Song's anxious heart relax. She said, Madame Xianyuan said that she would only leave after settling the Qing family's matter. She wouldn't let our family be implicated. Chapter 50-27. All right, we understand. The few of them made a mental note. During this period of time, I will personally cook her meals in our residence. The 3 of you will be my assistants. Come, let's go to the kitchen to take a look. He gestured, and after instructing his wife, he walked out with his 3 sons. At noon, Fengzhou brought the 3 children, and Mi-er led the way to the city. Before leaving, Mi-er went to inform her parents, so she knew that her father would be cooking tonight. Tonight's dinner, they still had to return to the residence to eat. After Mi-er and Fengzhou left, the residents began to get busy, preparing for dinner. At this time, most of the people in the Song residence had already forgotten about Kumeng, who was still recuperating in the guest courtyard. When Kumeng found out that the head of the Song family and the young masters had returned, the people in the residence were also busy. She sat in the courtyard in a daze, realizing that her situation in the Song family was really awkward. A guest could not be considered a guest, nor was she an old friend of the Song family, nor did she have any ties. Other than that one day, Madame Song never came again, as if she had forgotten about her. The Song family was kind enough to let her stay and recuperate. She was grateful, and her injuries gradually healed. However, as her injuries gradually healed, her heart became more anxious. Because she did not know where she was going to go. After sitting in the courtyard for a while and spacing out for a while, she stood up and walked out. With nowhere to go, there was no way out. Sitting here in a daze would not do her any good. Why not go out for a walk to relieve her boredom and see what the Song family was busy with? Kumeng, who was dressed in a plain white dress, had an extremely good appearance. Coupled with the slight worry between her brows, she exuded a delicate aura that made people want to protect her. As she walked in the residence, the guards in the residence could not help but glance at her. As long as it wasn't a forbidden area, no one would stop her. Thus, as she strolled, she unknowingly arrived at the main courtyard. She thought that since she was recuperating in the Song residence, she should properly thank Madame Song. Unexpectedly, before she could enter the main courtyard, she saw Madame Song walk out from the courtyard. Madam. She curtsied and called out. Miss Ku, what brings you here? Madame Song asked as she looked at Kumeng, her eyes flashing. A woman must be pretty and filial. What he said was true. She was also a woman. She was wearing a plain white dress with a small white flower in her hair. She didn't wear any makeup, but she was so beautiful that it made people want to take pity on her. Hearing her words, Kumeng paused and said, I was recuperating in the courtyard and hadn't walked around for a long time. Unknowingly, I walked over to Madame's place. Seeing that the servants were all busy, I wanted to ask Madame if there was anything I could help with. I see. Madame Song smiled and said, Miss Ku, you are a guest in our residence. Furthermore, you are injured and should be recuperating. Those chores are all done by the servants. Naturally, we can't trouble you. As she spoke, she paused for a moment before continuing, my master and my 3 sons have returned. Miss Ku is an unmarried woman after all. During this period of recuperation, it will be inconvenient for you to move about in the residence. If there is nothing urgent, Miss Ku can order the servants to come here. Chapter 50-28. A complicated look flashed across Madame Song's eyes as she watched Kumeng leave. Madame Song could not be blamed for treating her like a stranger. She was simply too beautiful. Now that she was homeless, who knew if Madame Song would harbor any evil thoughts? Sigh. Madame Song sighed softly and returned to the courtyard helplessly. Kumeng did not go anywhere else. Instead, she returned to her room in the courtyard and sat in front of the mirror. She looked at herself in the mirror and her eyes flashed. She gently caressed her face with one hand. In the past, I used to think that as a woman, it was a blessing to have such a beautiful face. However, it was also this face that brought about the destruction of my family. Now that I was luckily saved, it was as if I was reborn. Now that I look at this extremely beautiful face again, I feel that it is the root of disaster. She muttered to herself as she thought of Madame Xuanyuan's indifference and Madame Song's alienation. She knew that it was all because of this face. If I leave the Song family with such a beautiful face, who knows if I'll attract evil people like Qing Wanli one day. If that's the case, I might as well destroy it. That she seemed to be talking to herself. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. The hand that was caressing her face landed on the dressing table. She picked up a hairpin and slowly moved it to her face. Her gaze fell on the mirror. She looked at her perfect and flawless face in the mirror. Her hands trembled slightly. She pursed her lips and slowly closed her eyes. The hairpin in her hand was pressed against her face. The cold touch of the hairpin made her involuntarily shiver. In the next moment, she exerted force in her hand. The hairpin pierced her skin and slowly slid downwards. Fresh blood dripped down from the hairpin. As the hairpin slashed across her face, it left a deep cut. Due to the strength of the blow, her skin and flesh were slightly exposed. However, she tightly bit her lips and did not even make a sound. She only swallowed her tears and the blood that seeped out of her lips. Fingzhou and the others who were playing outside returned to the Song family mansion in the evening. Dinner was placed in the front courtyard of the Song family mansion. Madame Song thought that everyone had not sat down for a proper meal, so she wanted to have a meal with everyone tonight. Set the table properly. Move the flowers over there a little to make the place more spacious. Madame Song directed the servants to arrange the scene. Then, she thought of Kumeng, who was in the guest courtyard. No matter what, she was still a guest of the residence. It would be too much if she didn't invite her over. Thus, she ordered the servant girl beside her, "Go and invite Miss Ko over for dinner tonight." "Yes." The maidservant responded and went to the guest courtyard. Mother. Song Mi-er came over and looked at the busy people. She smiled and went forward to hold her hand. "Mother, who else do you want to invite to eat?" "It's Miss Kumeng from the guest courtyard," Madame Song said. "Oh, is it the girl you saved that night? Then I'll go invite him. In any case, I haven't seen her yet." As she spoke, she called out to the maidservant, "You don't have to go, I'll go." As she spoke, she let go of the maidservant's hand and walked towards the guest courtyard. When Madame Song saw this, she helplessly shook her head and ordered the maidservant, "Go see if the dishes are ready and have someone bring them up." Then, she ordered another maidservant, "Have you prepared the fruits I asked you to prepare after the meal?" Chapter 50-29. Replying to Miss Ko is in her room. "Do you need this servant to invite her out?" asked the servant. "No need, I'll go myself." Song Mi-er shook her head. Just as she was about to walk in, she stopped and asked, "Let me ask you, is Miss Ko really very beautiful?" Hearing this, the two servant girls didn't know what she meant. They looked at her and hesitated for a moment. If they said another girl was beautiful in front of Miss, would Miss be angry? "Say it. Why are you looking at me?" Song Mi-er said. "Miss Ko is very beautiful. Everyone in the manor says so." The two servant girls said and quickly lowered their heads, afraid that their miss would be angry. Oh. She didn't think much of it. Ever since she saw her miss's face that could topple the world, when other women said they were beautiful, she didn't think they could be more beautiful than her Mississippi. Walking inside, after looking around, she came to the door in the middle and knocked. "Miss Koo, I am Song Mir. My mother asked me to invite you to the front yard for a meal." She called out and stood in front of the door, waiting for her to open the door and see how beautiful she was. When Kumang heard the sound, she was stunned. She took out a veil and tied it around her face, but found that the veil was very thin. Through it, she could see the bleeding wound on her face. So she tore a piece of cloth from the inside of her clothes and tied it around the veil. "Miss Ko." Hearing the movement in the room but no sound, Song Mir called out again. She felt a little strange. "Coming." At the same time Kumang's voice came from the room, the door opened. Dressed in a plain white dress, Kumang stood by the door with a white veil around her face. Her face couldn't be seen, only her eyes could be seen. "Miss Song." She bowed slightly. Her voice was a little hoarse. Because the wound on her face was red and swollen, when she opened her mouth, it pulled at the wound on her face. Under the white veil, her face grew even paler. "Miss Ko, why are you wearing this?" Song Mir pointed at the white cloth on her face and asked in surprise. She bent her knees slightly and bowed again, saying, "Miss Song, I'm not feeling well, so I'm afraid I can't go. Please help Kumang thank Madam for her good intentions. When Kumang feels better, I'll personally go and thank her." Song Mir saw that although she was wearing a white cloth, her expression was indeed very weak, and her voice was slightly hoarse, so she said, "All right then. Miss Ko, if you're not feeling well, you should have a good rest. Later, I'll have the estate's physician come over to take a look at you. No need to trouble yourself. I'll be fine after some rest." "Thank you, Miss Song," she said. Seeing this, Song Mir did not say anything else. She told her to rest well and left. After watching her leave, Kumang closed the door and went back to lie on the bed. The wound on her face was burning with pain, and it was so painful that it twitched and twitched. She closed her eyes and thought, "I'll be fine after I get through these 2 days." On the other side, Song Mir told her mother what Kumang said. When Madam Song heard this, she sighed softly and said, "Fine, later tell your brother and the others to leave a portion and have the servant send it to her." "Okay." Song Mir replied with a smile. Chapter 50-30. When the meal was finally over and everyone had dispersed, the elders hurriedly stopped Song Lingbo. "Lingbo, what's going on with you? Why did he dive into the kitchen to cook after coming back? I'm afraid the matter between the Song and Ching family isn't over yet. As the family head, why aren't you worried at all?" One of the elders said worriedly. "That's right. Now that the family is in big trouble, you're still in the mood to eat and drink." Another elder shook his head and said. Because he was worried, even though Song Lingbo was in charge of cooking tonight, he was not in the mood to eat. Hearing this, Song Lingbo said, "Elders, don't worry. The Ching family probably won't dare to come again. Even if they do, there's no need to worry. Don't think about this anymore and go back to rest. Trust me, the residents will be fine." As he spoke, he did not wait for them to say anything else and walked away. A few days later, in the morning, Kumang came to the main courtyard and said to the maidservant outside, "Please report to Madam that Kumang is here to bid farewell." The maidservant went in to report that Madam Song had arrived in the courtyard and had someone bring her in. When she came in, she saw that she was wearing a veil and had changed her white clothes into a slightly darker beige dress. She still looked like the same person, but there was something different about her. Miss Ko, have your injuries healed? Madame Song asked gently. I've made Madame worry. Kumeng's injuries have all healed. I've disturbed you in the residence for a long time, so I'm here to bid farewell. Many thanks to Madame for giving me a place to recuperate during this period of time. Kumeng is eternally grateful. Kumeng bowed to Madame Song gratefully. Hearing this, Madame Song nodded and asked, now that you're homeless, what do you plan to do from now on? The world is vast, there will always be a place for Kumeng to stay. Madam, you don't have to worry about Kumeng. She said softly, Kumeng is going to bid farewell to Madame Xianyuan. I wonder if Madame can lead the way. She was indebted to Madame Xianyuan. Now that she was leaving, she naturally had to bid farewell to her. All right, I'm going over as well. Come with me. Madame Song said and brought her to the courtyard where Fingzhou and the children were staying. Early in the morning, the three children woke up and practiced their martial arts in the courtyard. Fingzhou sat in the courtyard and watched, giving them pointers from time to time. Mi-er accompanied her. When Mi-er saw her mother coming over, she stood up and ran towards her mother with a smile. She held her mother's hand and walked into the courtyard. Mother, why have you come? As he spoke, he looked at Kumeng and called out with a smile, Miss Ko is also here. Miss Song. Kumeng nodded at her. Mi-er asked. Initially, she wanted to see what she looked like. Who would have thought that the 2 times she saw her, she would be wearing a veil? Kumeng smiled. The veil covered her smile, but her eyes were slightly curved. It was obvious that she was smiling. My body has recovered. I'm here today to bid farewell to Madame Xianyuan. She looked at the woman in green sitting by the stone table. At this moment, Madame Song said, Madame Xianyuan, Miss Kumeng said she's leaving. She asked me to bring her here to bid farewell to you. Fingzhou calmly replied and looked at Kumeng. Chapter 50-31. Yes, I've disturbed you during this period of time. Now that I've recovered, it's time for me to leave. Kumeng said softly. Then where are you going after you leave? Mi-er asked curiously. She heard from her mother that Kumeng's family had been annihilated and she was the only one left. I haven't thought about it yet, but I'll take it one step at a time. I believe that there's always a way out and I'll find a place to stay. She said softly and smiled at Song Mi-er. Mi-er knew that she must be smiling at this moment, but the veil was covering her face, so she couldn't see her smile. She also couldn't see how beautiful her face, which was praised as extremely beautiful by everyone in the residence, was behind this smile. For a moment, her heart skipped a beat, and she grinned. She walked forward and said, Miss Ko, your eyes are so beautiful. I've seen you twice, but I've never seen what you look like. Now you're leaving. Before you leave, can you at least let me see what you look like? Otherwise, I won't be able to recognize you when we meet outside. Kumeng was stunned and looked at Song Mi-er. She narrowed her eyes and said, It's not that I don't want to let you see, but I'm afraid of scaring you. Hearing this, Madame Song was surprised and puzzled. Fingzhou, who was sitting at the table and drinking tea, paused. He took a sip and put down the teacup, then looked up. Song Mi-er was stunned. Scaring me? How could that be? Although I've never seen your face, I've heard the servants in the residence say that you're very beautiful. It's because they've been praising you that I'm curious to see how beautiful you are. Then, she smiled and said, Also, I'm very brave. Ordinary things can't scare me. Kumeng was a little hesitant. She didn't intend to let them see her disfigured face because she didn't want to scare them. She also didn't want to leave them with a frightening impression. Madame Song asked curiously, "What's wrong with Miss Ku's face? When I saw you wearing a veil today, I thought you wanted to cover your face so that you could walk around freely. Isn't that the case?" At this moment, whether it was Madame Song, Song Mi, or even Feng Zhou, none of them would have thought that she would ruin her beautiful face. "Miss Ku, please take off your veil and let me see you. I'm speaking the truth. You're wearing a veil. If we meet outside in the future, I might not be able to recognize you," Mi said as she looked at her expectantly. Seeing this, Komeng removed one side of her veil. When the veil fell to one side, revealing her ruined face, Madame Song and Song Mi couldn't help but gasp. Hiss! How could this happen? Feng Zhou's gaze landed on Komeng's face. His eyes flashed and a trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. He really did not expect this. "I thought it would be safer this way." She tried her best to speak in a calm voice. Then, she slowly walked up to Feng Zhou and knelt down. Komeng pays her respects to Madame Xuanyuan. Komeng will remember Madame Xuanyuan's great kindness. She bowed deeply to Madame Xuanyuan. Unlike the slight curtsy she gave Madame Song, she bowed to Madame Xuanyuan. Chapter 50-32. Feng Zhou looked at the kneeling Komeng, then lightly tapping her finger on the table, she said, "Since you have nowhere to go, I will show you the way." Hearing these words, Komeng was startled, and couldn't help but raise her head to look at her. "Mi, brush and ink." Feng Zhou looked at Song Mi, and said, "Okay, I will go get it immediately." Song Mi replied, then ran to Yu's room, and took out the brush, ink, and paper she usually used to practice writing. After placing the things on the table, she retreated to the side, and at the same time, looked at the kneeling Komeng, somewhat shocked that she would destroy her own appearance. She was indeed ruthless to herself, for a woman to destroy her face like this. It could be seen how much determination she had. Feng Zhou wrote there, and the few people who didn't come close didn't know what she wrote. They only saw her write it, put it in an envelope, and sealed it, then wrote 2 sentences on another piece of paper, folded it, and handed it over to Komeng. "Go. Look at it after you leave the city. This paper has the address you want to go to, as well as the person you want to give this letter to. It is also written here." Hearing this, Komeng received it, and said, "Many thanks, Madame Xuanyuan." She didn't ask anything, and only put away the things she gave her, then stood up. Looking at her self-destroyed appearance, Feng Zhou sighed in her heart, and said, "After your strength reaches High God Realm, if you want to restore your appearance, you can come to Song family to find me." Hearing this, Komeng's heart shook, and involuntarily looked at her. Her disfigured appearance, she actually had the ability to restore it. At the same time, she suppressed her thoughts, and said, "Many thanks, Madame Xuanyuan, Komeng will take her leave." Finished speaking, she bowed to Madame Song and Song Mi, then turned around and left. "I will send her off," Song Mi said, then quickly followed and sent her out of the residence. Feng Zhou took out a communication jade and handed it to Madame Song, and said, "This communication jade is for you. Keep it. If you have any matters in the future, you can use it to send messages." "Okay," Mrs. Song replied as she took it and put it away. Not long after, Song Mi returned and asked curiously, "Mistress, where did you send her? Why don't you just say it directly? Why do you have to write it down on paper?" When Madame Song heard me call Feng Zhou master, her heart skipped a beat, and a smile appeared on her face. After finding out about Feng Zhou's identity, she also found out that Mi had recognized her as her master. It was because of this that she came to the Song family and helped them so much. When they thought about how this crazy girl had accidentally recognized Feng Zhou as her master, they felt that it was inconceivable. Fengjiu smiled and said, I told her to go to the Jiang clan and look for immortal elder Qinghua. As for whether she will go to the Jiang clan, that will be up to her. Hearing this, Songmi understood. She knew immortal elder Qinghua, who was the ancestor of the Jiang clan. With his arrangements, it would probably be a good place to go. However, whether Kumeng would go to the Jiang clan or not, that would be up to her. However, when she thought about how she had left alone, Mi-er's eyes turned, and she asked curiously, Mistress, then why don't you keep Kumeng by your side? She doesn't have any relatives left anyway, she's all alone. Chapter 50-33. You can't be so impudent. Madame Song scolded her daughter. Mi-er stuck out her tongue and didn't say anything else. Fengjiu smiled, it's fine, there aren't many rules around me. She looked at Songmi and said, I'll let you follow me because you have extraordinary culinary skills, and I just happen to lack someone like you by my side. Of course, the prerequisite is that I find you pleasing to the eye. She said with a smile, and seeing Songmi smile after hearing her words, she continued, as for Kumeng, she doesn't have any outstanding characteristics, so why should I let her follow me? She's not strong enough to protect me, and she can't even be a servant. In terms of loyalty, she's even less so. Why would I keep someone like her by my side? She held her cheek with one hand and said slowly, however, there's one thing that surprised me. She dared to destroy her own face, so it's clear that she's a ruthless person. Since she dares to be so ruthless to herself, I'll show her the right path. That's the best I can do. Madame Song nodded in agreement. Indeed, even she wouldn't keep someone like Kumeng by her side, let alone someone as noble and powerful as the Phoenix Lord. Songmi seemed to understand, oh, I understand. At this moment, she was incomparably glad that she had outstanding culinary skills. Alright, accompany Madame Xianyuan. I'll go back first. Madame Song smiled and returned to her courtyard. A few days later, when the Qing family in Longnan saw Qing Wanli and his entourage coming back, they were almost furious. Who was it? Who did it? Qing Wanshan, the head of the Qing family, roared, glaring at the Qing family guards kneeling in the hall. Family head, it's cooking god Song Lingbo's Song family. One of the guards said with a trembling voice. Cooking god Song Lingbo. A mere chef has the ability to cripple 4 of my Qing family's elders, and even dare to cripple my, Qing Wanshan's, younger brother. How dare the Song family? The gloomy voice was mixed with a fierce murderous aura and monstrous fury. His fist heavily smashed on the chair beside him. With a bang, the chair shattered into a pile of fragments. Master Chef Song family. Impossible. No matter how famous their clan is, they can't cripple 4 of our Qing clan's consecrators. An old man walked in, followed by a few other old men. Grand Elder. Qing Wanshan stood up and bowed when he saw them. The old man in the lead walked to a chair and sat down. He nodded at Qing Wanshan and looked at the guards. Tell me in detail, what exactly is going on? It's like this. Second Master and the 4 elders went to the Song family to take a rainbow spirit stone from the Song family as a birthday gift for the patriarch. When they went, Song Lingbo and the others weren't at home. The guard explained the whole story in detail. That's right. That woman also said. The guard didn't dare to continue. Speak. Qing Wanshan was furious. He shouted at the top of his lungs. That woman said that if the Qing family came to apologize with a big gift, this matter would be over. Otherwise, let's see what will happen to Second Master and the others. The guard's voice became softer and softer. In the end, his head was almost on the ground. Chapter 50-34. The Grand Supreme Elder narrowed his eyes and his expression darkened. A terrifying murderous aura emanated from his body. What an ignorant woman. She's seriously injured my Qing family members and she still wants us to pay her a visit and apologize. She really deserves to die. Qing Wanshan spoke in a gloomy voice. His chest heaved violently due to his rage. At this moment, the Grand Supreme Elder asked again, "How does that woman look? How old is she? What are her characteristics? Tell me in detail. I'd like to see where this person has sprung out from and dared to speak such arrogant words." Yes, that woman was dressed in green robes. Her features could only be considered delicate and ordinary. There was nothing special about her. If there was anything special about her, it would be that her aura was terrifying. At that time, this subordinate had only glanced at her and felt his entire body turn cold. It was as if he had fallen into hell. It was extremely terrifying. Recalling the situation at that time, the guard's face turned pale and he could not help but shiver. "Grand Supreme Elder, how should we deal with this matter?" Qing Wanshan looked at him and asked. His voice was filled with suppressed anger and murderous intent. The Grand Supreme Elder stroked his beard and paused before asking, "How is Wanli? As for the other high elders, have they been examined by a doctor?" "I have. Their cultivations have been crippled and their inner cores have been shattered. There is no possibility for them to cultivate for the rest of their lives. The 4 high elders are now hanging on by a thread and are not far from death. As for Wanli, aside from his cultivation being crippled, there are many wounds on his body. Even if he doesn't die immediately, he will be a cripple in the future even if he survives." As he spoke, he clenched his fists tightly and a cracking sound could be heard. That damned woman in green. He wished that he could personally cripple her and let her have a taste of living a life worse than death. To be able to cripple the 4 high elders, this woman's cultivation must be very powerful. How about this? Send someone to investigate the woman's identity as described by the guard. The Grand Supreme Elders and I will ask the Grand Supreme Elder for instructions and see how the Grand Supreme Elder will deal with this matter. All right, I'll arrange for someone to investigate. As Qing Wanshan spoke, he knew in his heart that the ancestors' final decision would most likely be to send a few Grand Elders to the Song clan and exterminate the Song clan along with the green-clothed woman. After all, crippling the Qing family was equivalent to slapping the Qing family in the face. With the Qing family's current status and power, how could they be bullied and humiliated by the Song family? If they did not destroy the Song family, how could the Qing family in Longnan in the future? That night, in the meeting hall of the Qing clan, the 9 experts of the Qing clan were all sitting in the hall, and at the main seat was a white-haired old man. His Grand Supreme Elder, his lips pursed lips, he looked, Grand Supreme Elders. What else is there to see? Grand, to be. He looked to be in his 40s or 50s, but it was hard to say how old his bones were. After all, those who could sit in this meeting hall were naturally not ordinary people. Yes, the Song family must be destroyed. To prove the might of the Qing family in Longnan. Another person said. Chapter 50-35. Qing Wanshan shook his head and said, "No, there's almost no such person. There aren't many women who have such powerful strength, but after checking all of them, there's no one who matches. Until now, we still don't know who that woman is. It's just a Song family, a woman of unknown origin. What's there to worry about? Kill them if you need to, destroy them if you need to. It's not a big deal." The one who spoke was a woman in her 30s. She wore a red dress that was slightly revealing. She sat leisurely and played with her slender fingers from time to time. The survival of a family was like an ant to her. Hearing everyone's words, the old man in the main seat stroked his beard and looked at them, saying, "Since that's the case, I'll let you make a trip. In a few days, it'll be my birthday. Come back quickly." The people who spoke earlier looked at each other and smiled. They all cupped their hands and said, "Okay, we'll make a trip personally. When the time comes, we'll give the Song family's rainbow spirit stone to the ancestor as a birthday gift. Haha, then I'll wait for your return." The old man in the main seat smiled. He stroked his beard and squinted his eyes, saying, "I believe that the destruction of the Song family will make my Qing family's reputation even greater." Everyone in the hall looked at each other and revealed an indescribable smile. The few people who spoke did not stay any longer. They got up and headed to the Song family together. Just as the ancestor said, they had to go quickly and return quickly. With their strength, dealing with the Song family and the woman of unknown origin was just a matter of making a trip. The result was already predetermined. Cheng Wanshan stood outside the meeting hall and looked at the sky. The figures of the Grand Elders had long disappeared. With the Grand Elders' cultivation and strength, it wouldn't take long for them to reach the Song family. Song family, and that woman, just wait to be destroyed. Song family. On this day, Fengjiu accompanied the three children out for a walk and returned. She let them practice their movement skills in the courtyard while she went into her room and took out a book to read. These days in the Song clan, she was relatively free every day. Therefore, she was able to spare some time to find a way to break the isolation between the Heaven Realm and the other Heaven Realms. In the past 2 days, she had found some clues about this in an ancient book. Thus, she had been flipping through it, hoping to solve this problem as soon as possible. As long as she could solve the problem of the isolation of the Heaven Realm, she would be able to freely travel back and forth between the Heaven Realm. This was very important to her. She flipped through the books in her room, and the children in the courtyard did not disturb her. It was only in the evening when Mi-er delivered dinner and knocked on her door that she walked out. "Mistress, my father made something delicious again today. Come and have a taste," Mi-er said with a smile as she scooped a bowl of soup for her and talked about the interesting things that had happened today. As Fengjiu listened, he looked at the sky and said, "Another day has passed." For the past few days, there had been no movement from the Qing family. She thought that if she stayed for another 10 days, there would definitely be movement. At that time, it would be clear whether the Qing clan would be exterminated or not. Chapter 50-36. It seems that the people from the Qing clan are here. Fengjiu curled her lips and murmured softly. Her gaze fell on the darkening sky. At this moment, a powerful pressure and aura enveloped the entire Song clan. It was as if the entire Song clan was trapped within. Almost at the same time, the people of the Song family sensed it. Song Lingbo was the first to walk out. Seeing that the entire mansion was surrounded by a powerful aura, he immediately ordered in a deep voice, "Get everyone to return to their rooms. Secret guards and elite guards, guard the entire manor." "Yes, sir." A sonorous and powerful voice responded, and the secret guards and elite guards in the mansion quickly made arrangements. Because the leader of the Song family had already told them what to do, everyone in the manor had been preparing so that they would not panic when the danger came. "Is it the Qing family?" Mrs. Song followed him out and asked worriedly. "Who else could it be?" Song Lingbo said, "Mrs. Song, go back to your room and don't come out. I will go check it out." Knowing that she could not help him, Mrs. Song did not add to the trouble. Seeing him walk to the front yard, Mrs. Song said to the secret guard, "Go tell Li Hong and the others to come here." "Understood." A voice rang out, and a silhouette flashed past, heading towards the courtyards of the others. In the yard, Mir and Hauer were playing in the manor. When they felt the force enveloping the entire song manor, they all stopped and looked up. The sky had darkened. There was not a single star in sight. The moon was also covered by dark clouds. "Let's go back to the yard first." Mir saw that something was wrong and quickly led the three to the backyard. She did not expect to run into her three brothers. Big brother, second brother, third brother. Mir quickly walked up and asked, "Where are you going?" "Let's go check it out." "Mir, take them to mother's place in the main yard. Don't come out even if you hear the sound. We will be outside. Just take care of mother," Song Yihong said. "But..." "No buts. Can't you see that the entire Song Manor is enveloped by that powerful force? There must be a lot of people from the Qing family. Go!" Song Yifan shouted. Seeing this, Mi-er quickly brought Hao-er and the others to the main courtyard. "Don't we need to look for mother?" asked in a low voice. "No need. Mistress will definitely go to the front yard. You don't have to worry about her. Just take good care of yourselves," Mi-er said as she hurried towards the main yard. The faces of the elders in the Song clan turned ashen. They looked at the invisible aura in the air and couldn't help but mutter, "It's over, it's over. Our Song clan is finished this time." The Qing clan had really come. Moreover, the moment they arrived, they had trapped the entire Song clan. It was obvious that they didn't want them to have a chance to escape. This time, it was likely that they wouldn't be able to escape. At this moment, there were 4 people standing outside the gate of the Song family. They were 2 old men, a middle-aged man, and a woman in red. After seeing the old man trap the entire Song family in the barrier, they looked at each other and smiled. This way, no one from the Song family will be able to escape. Chapter 50-37. The woman in red gently lifted a strand of hair that had fallen across her face and gently twirled it between her fingers. There was a disdainful smile on her face and a murderous look flashed across her eyes as she stared at the residents in front of her. She seemed to have thought of something and chuckled softly, "The rest of the Song family members are yours. As for that green-robed woman, I'll take her life." She paused and laughed viciously. "Only when she falls into my hands will she be able to experience a fate worse than death." The middle-aged man glanced at her and said, "I've heard from the guards that this green-robed woman is very powerful. To avoid any mistakes, I'll go with you." Hearing this, the woman in red scoffed disapprovingly. "What? Don't you trust me? Do you think that I would lose to a woman who had appeared out of nowhere? The 2 of you will go together." The elder next to her spoke up and glanced at the 2 of them. "Yuehong, you'll deal with that green-robed woman. If you think that she's too difficult to deal with, then we'll fight 2 against 1. No matter what method you use, this woman must die. I don't want any accidents to happen." Seeing that he had spoken, the woman in red did not say anything else. She only pursed her lips and listened to him speak. Aside from Song Lingbo, there aren't many other capable people in the Song family. Number 4, you deal with Song Lingbo and the others. As for me, I'll go to the Song family ancestors' closed-door cultivation in the back of the mountain and force him to come out. Then, I'll kill him and take the Rainbow Spirit Stone back as a birthday gift for the ancestor." Hearing this, the 4 of them looked at each other and replied in unison, "All right, it's decided." Once they had spoken, 3 of them leaped into the Song family home while the other took a detour and headed towards the mountain behind the Song family home. Based on their refined state of power, destroying a mere Song family was a piece of cake. Even if they had known that the green-robed woman was very powerful, none of the 4 of them thought much of her. When the three of them leaped into the Song family home and landed in the front courtyard, they saw that aside from Song Lingbo and his three sons, there were only a few elders in the front courtyard. It seems that these elders were the elders of the Song family. However, in their eyes, their powers were nothing. Song Lingbo. The elder among the three opened his mouth and spoke. His gaze fell upon Song Lingbo. Are you prepared to die? Song Lingbo stared at the three of them, shielding his three sons behind him, using his own aura to protect them from the pressure of the Supreme Being experts. He then asked, the three of you are three of the 9 Supreme Beings from the Qing clan. That's right. They were very clear that the Song clan would die in the end. Therefore, they were not in a hurry to kill them. The old man's sharp gaze landed on him as he said, my Qing clan already knows that your Song clan colluded with others to kill my Qing clan members. We came here tonight to take the lives of your Song clan members. Of the Song of the Song of the Song of the Song. Of the Song family home. Chapter 50-38. His laughter abruptly stopped as his eyes were filled with murderous intent. In this world, the strong rule. You want the Qing family to apologize to the Song family. Ha! You really don't know what you're talking about. Hearing his words, the faces of the elders turned pale. They came to Song Lingbo's side and asked anxiously, Lingbo, you told us not to worry. What plan do you have? Now that the Qing family is here, why don't you say something? They were really anxious. The Qing family had come knocking on their door, and 3 of the Qing 9 Supremes had come. If only 2 of them had come, their old bones and Song Lingbo might have been able to contend against them. But now that there were 3 of them, it was a different story. Even if they gave it their all, they would not be able to fight against 3 Supremes. Song Lingbo pursed his lips and did not speak. What about that woman? The woman in red asked impatiently. When the elders heard her words, they immediately took a step forward and asked, what woman? Let me tell you. Even if we have to fight to the death today, we will not let you hurt a single person from the Song family. With just you. The woman in red laughed coldly as a murderous intent flashed in her eyes. Suddenly, she raised her hand and threw a hidden weapon at the elder in front. Since you're in such a hurry to die, I'll grant you your wish. Whoosh! A sharp chi blade carrying the pressure of a Supreme Being expert shot out, heading straight for the elder at the front. The intention was to catch him off guard and kill him, letting the Song clan members feel the fear of death before them. Be careful. When the hidden weapon shot out, it was so fast that only its shadow could be seen. But the aura of a Supreme's was so strong that it could not be ignored. Song Lingbo stepped forward and stood in front of the elder, preparing to shoot down the hidden weapon. Unexpectedly, a clanging sound rang out, and the hidden weapon that even he couldn't see clearly was shot down to the ground. Clang! Song Lingbo and his 3 sons were stunned. They saw that not far in front of them, beside the hidden weapon, a gold coin had also fallen. Who is it? When the woman in red saw her hidden weapon being knocked down, her face immediately turned gloomy. Fengjiu walked over from a distance. He was dressed in green and had a plain and ordinary appearance. However, his clear and cold eyes were calm and indifferent. Her pace was neither fast nor slow, and her aura was restrained, making it impossible for others to see through her cultivation. Sorry, I'm late. Fengjiu smiled apologetically at the Song clan members. With a wave of his hand, a few items were tossed over to the 3 Song clan brothers. The 3 Song brothers looked at the things that fell into their hands or arms in astonishment, and couldn't help but be stunned. With his eyesight, he could naturally tell that these 3 items were top-notch treasures. But, where did they come from? In contrast to the astonishment of the Song clan members, the three Qing clan members were shocked. Their hearts were in turmoil as they cried out involuntarily, "How did those things end up in your hands?" Fengjiu smiled and said to the Song clan members, "When I was on my way here, I took care of an old man who snuck in, which delayed me a little. I took those things from him, so I'll give them to you." Her gaze moved away from the Song clan members and landed on the three of them as she smiled faintly. Chapter 50-39. You've killed him. That's impossible. The elder cried out in shock, unable to believe what she had just said. The middle-aged man and the woman in red's expressions turned serious. Was it impossible? If it was impossible, how could those three items be in her hands? How could she have given them away as a gift? After all, those three items were the Grand Supreme Elder's treasures. At this moment, they finally put away the contempt and disapproval in their hearts and reassessed this unremarkable woman in green robes. To be able to kill a cultivator at the peak of the refined state without making a single sound, this woman's power was far too terrifying. "Who on earth are you?" the middle-aged man asked cautiously. At this moment, he suddenly realized that if they were not careful, all three of them would die here tonight. However, they shouldn't have never heard of a woman with such powerful strength. "I've given the Qing family a way out, but since you insist on walking down the path of death, don't blame me for what happens next." Fengjiu replied calmly as her clear and cold eyes fell upon their faces. "Now that things have come to this, why don't you think about how you want to die? Perhaps I can grant you your wish. You launched a sneak attack, didn't you? Based on the Grand Supreme Elder's cultivation, how could he have been killed by you without making a single sound if you had fought him head-on? You launched a sneak attack." The woman in red's voice was sinister as she spoke. With a wave of her hand, a long sword appeared in her hand. "No matter how powerful you are, could you possibly be more powerful than the three of us combined?" She stared darkly at her, thinking about how her disciple, Qing Wanli, had been crippled by this woman and how the Grand Supreme Elder had been killed by this woman. Her heart was filled with murderous intent. "I'm going to break the tendons in your limbs. I'm going to chop off your hands. I'm going to gouge out your eyes and hang them in front of the Song family's main gate. I'm going to slice off your flesh piece by piece." She spat hatefully. Then, she clenched the sharp sword in her hand and charged towards the figure in green in front of her. Fengjiu curled his lips and chuckled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. She didn't dodge, nor did she dodge. Instead, she watched as the woman in red attacked her with her sword. Only when the tip of the sword was right in front of her did she stretch out her hand and clamp down on the blade. At the tip of the sword, the pressure and sword aura of a supreme being expert had naturally dissipated before it even touched Fengjiu. At this moment, she was gently holding the sword between two fingers, and the woman in red was unable to advance even an inch further. "Yes." The woman in red clenched her teeth and strengthened her spiritual power. She wanted to stab her sword into the woman's throat, but the sword couldn't go any further. Fengjiu looked at the woman in red in front of him and said in a calm and indifferent voice, "Do you know why you didn't make any noise?" At this moment, although she was holding the sharp sword, her aura still did not leak out at all. She pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes, "Because he doesn't even have the power to retaliate." As she spoke, she released a powerful aura from her body and instantly enveloped the woman in red. Chapter 50-40. A chill rose from the soles of her feet and shot straight to her heart. A bone-piercing chill filled her entire being, making her feel as if she had fallen into an abyss. Cold sweat broke out on her back and her hair stood on end. At that moment, she felt as if a pair of ghostly hands were clutching her throat, making it impossible for her to breathe. She froze on the spot. Fengjiu's fingers, which were holding her sharp blade, moved forward and snatched the sharp sword from her hand. He turned it around and held it in his hand. A cold light flashed and the sound of the sword's aura filled the air. The sound of clothes tearing could be heard as pieces of red shards fell chaotically to the ground, revealing the woman's undergarments. She froze on the spot with her eyes wide open. She stared at the green-robed woman who had snatched her sword in horror and shock. At that moment, she finally understood why there had been no commotion when the Grand Supreme Elder had been killed. It was all because this woman was far too powerful. "You're wearing red. You're really an eyesore." Fengjiu spoke slowly. He raised the sword in his hand and placed it against her neck. "Even though I'd really like to grant you your wish of dying, I reckon that death would be far too ugly. Why don't we change it?" The woman's eyes narrowed. She wanted to speak, but she couldn't make a sound. At that moment, she only saw a cold light flash past, and a cold feeling came from her throat. In the next moment, she fell to the ground. When the elder and middle-aged man from the Qing family saw this, they could not help but take a step back. Their eyes were filled with horror and shock. They could not believe that a cultivator at the refined state had been killed by the green-robed woman's sword right in front of their very eyes. Furthermore, she had been completely defenseless. This scene was too shocking, to the point that they forgot to react at that moment. Their hearts were filled with fear that came from trembling. They knew that they should run away immediately. However, their feet felt as if they had been injected with lead. They were so heavy that they could not move even half a step. If they were already in such a state, there was no need to mention the elders from the Song family. At that moment, their eyes were wide open as they watched in disbelief. At this moment, they finally understood why this woman called Madame Xianyuan had said that there was no need to worry with her here. She was truly very strong. The middle-aged man from the Qing family was the first to react. Looking at the woman in green who was looking at them with a sword in her hand, his expression immediately changed and he exclaimed, "Sir, please wait a moment." He was afraid that if he spoke too slowly, the other party's sword would turn, and they would fall to the ground like the dead Yuhong. After becoming Supreme Being experts, they cherished their lives more than anyone else. Given the current situation, no matter what, they had to find a way to survive. "What do you want to say before you die? Speak." Fengjiu didn't really care. In her eyes, these two people were already dead. She didn't mind letting them finish their last words. Hearing this, the middle-aged man's heart sank. He had originally wanted to open his mouth to seek a chance of survival, but at this moment, he clearly understood that no matter what he said, no matter what he did, he would not be able to escape death. Chapter 50-41. If a dignified honorable state cultivator died without knowing who killed her, it would be too cowardly of a death. Fengjiu raised her brows and glanced at the two of them. The corners of her lips curled up as she slowly said, "My name is Fengjiu." Fengjiu. The two men from the Qing family narrowed their eyes. Clearly, they knew who that name was. They stared in shock at the calm woman in green robes in front of them. Waves of shock surged in their hearts. Fengjiu. The Empress Phoenix Master. It's actually her. Heavens! How did our Qing family offend such a person? The old man staggered back and his body was on the verge of collapsing. He seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. His face was ghastly pale as he muttered, "It's the Empress Phoenix Master. The heavens want to destroy our Qing family, the heavens want to destroy our Qing family." At this moment, the middle-aged man's face was ghastly pale as well. He looked at Fengjiu who wore green clothes and her ordinary appearance. At this moment, he finally understood why they couldn't find any information about this person. She was in disguise. The Empress Phoenix Master. How could our Qing family stand a chance against such an existence? She was able to kill the Northern Flame Emperor all by herself and change the ruler of the Northern Flame Emperor's territory in a single night. They had only heard of such a terrifying figure in legends, but now she was standing right in front of them, alive and well, and they were trying to kill her. Would the Qing family still have a way out after doing all this? I don't dare to trouble the Phoenix Master. I will take my own life. The old man's voice trembled as he looked at Fengzhou. I know that the Qing family is doomed. I only hope that the Phoenix Master can be magnanimous and spare the descendants of the Qing family. I will be eternally grateful. With that, he knelt down with a thud and bowed deeply to Fengzhou. After kowtowing 3 times, he raised his hand and slapped the top of his head. Pfft! He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell down. Seeing the old man slap himself on the top of his head, the middle-aged man's heart trembled. He pursed his lips and knelt beside the old man's corpse, bowing deeply to Fengzhou. Phoenix Lord, please be magnanimous and leave a way out for our Qing family's descendants. As soon as he finished, he did not wait for Fengzhou to speak and slapped himself on the top of his head. Blood spurted out. After the middle-aged man fell to the ground, everything in the courtyard returned to normal. No one spoke, and even the sound of breathing could not be heard. Only the gentle night breeze blew past, blowing away the smell of blood in the air. Fengzhou's eyes flashed as he looked at the 2 corpses. These 2 knew that death was the only way out for them, but they still didn't forget to ask for a way out for the future generations of the Qing family. She gently exhaled and threw the sword in her hand beside the woman's corpse. Then, she turned to look at Song Lingbo and slowly said, "We will leave tomorrow and go to the Qing family to help you settle the last of your troubles. You can deal with the corpses on the ground." As soon as she finished speaking, she didn't stay any longer and walked back to the rear courtyard. After watching her leave, Song Lingbo stepped forward and collected the items on the corpses. He handed them to his eldest son and said, "Take these to Madame Xianyuan. Also, tell your mother that the matter has been resolved. Don't worry." Chapter 50-42. Song Lingbo instructed the hidden guards to dispose of the corpses. When he turned around, he saw that the elders were still standing there in a daze. He walked up to them and called out, "First elder." Seeing that they didn't respond, he patted the first elder's shoulder and asked, "First elder?" "Ah." The first elder came back to his senses and looked at Song Lingbo in front of him. He recalled what happened earlier and asked, "Lingbo, just now, Madame Xianyuan said that her name is..." He was interrupted before he could finish. "Let's go back and talk. Let them clean up here," Song Lingbo said and gave them a look. Although they were all from the Song Manor, it was not appropriate for them to discuss the Phoenix Master's status. All right. Let's go in and talk." The first elder also came back to his senses and nodded. He took a deep breath and looked at the corpses being carried away. He was still a little dizzy. He couldn't believe that the Song family's crisis had been resolved just like that. He couldn't believe that Madame Xianyuan was actually the Empress Phoenix Master. That night, Song Lingbo roughly explained the situation with Fengzhou to them, then went to arrange other matters. The next morning, Fengzhou, Song Mi, and the 3 children were accompanied by the Song family to the main gate. Along the way, Song Lingbo and Madame Xianyuan occasionally reminded me, to take care of herself and to stay by Fengzhou's side and do her work seriously. "Father, Mother, I know. You don't have to worry." Mi smiled and said, "It's not like I won't be coming home. If there's a chance in the future, I'll come back. Listen to Madame Xianyuan well. Don't cause trouble outside. Song Lingbo reminded. I know. Mi-er replied and quickly ran to Hao-er and the other two, afraid that they would continue nagging. Let's stop here. Fingzhou looked at them and smiled. Thank you for taking care of us during this time. You're too kind, Madame Xianyuan is too kind. It's the Song family's fortune to be able to welcome an important guest like Madame Xianyuan. One of the elders hurriedly said. Fingzhou smiled and said goodbye to them. After the matter with the Qing family is settled, I'll have Mi-er inform you. Goodbye. With that, he left with Mi-er and the three children. Longnan Qing family. At this time, the Qing family was shrouded in a dark cloud. The atmosphere was oppressive and terrifying. The servants in the residence were trembling with fear, not daring to make a single mistake. Chang's Qing Wanshan. Cheng. After a long while, the Qing family's ancestor said, I asked you to come here early in the morning to tell you that this is what happened. Now that their origin spirit lamps have been extinguished, what do you think we should do next? This was something he didn't expect. In one night, none of the four supremes who went to the Song family came back alive. In the lantern house where they worshipped their origin spirit lamps, 4 of them were extinguished. This was no small matter for the Qing family. If they weren't careful, it could lead to the extinction of the family. Chapter 50-43. I'm afraid things won't end like this. Another person said in a deep voice. He looked at the ancestor and said solemnly, originally, the guards who came back alive brought the woman's words. She said that as long as our Qing clan brought gifts to apologize, this matter would be over. However, our Qing clan didn't send anyone to apologize. Instead, we sent 4 supreme being cultivators to destroy the Song clan. Now that the 4 of them are dead, if I'm not wrong, our Qing clan's next target will be the Qing clan. Hearing this, the hall fell silent. Obviously, they had also thought of this point and guessed this possibility. To be able to kill the 4 of them, could it be that the green-robed woman alone? Maybe she had other helpers in the dark. That's why the 4 of them were killed. Qing Wanshan said. He still found it hard to believe that the woman alone could kill the 4 supreme martial artists of their Qing clan. The problem at hand is no longer about who killed the 4 of them. Instead, we need to discuss what we should do next. Only then will we be able to protect our Qing clan. If we don't handle this well, it will be a disaster that will wipe out our entire clan. If we knew this would happen, we would have sent someone to visit that day. Then, this wouldn't have happened. An old man sitting at the back shook his head and sighed. His voice paused for a moment before he continued, the Supreme Elder is at the peak of the Supreme Martial Artist level, and his strength is above all of us. In the entire Qing clan, only the old ancestor is slightly stronger than him. Think about it, what kind of existence would a person who could kill him and prevent him from even having the chance to send us a message be? Could it be someone from a hidden clan? Someone asked and couldn't help but ponder. The old man shook his head and sighed, I'm worried that our Qing clan will be wiped out. This matter is no small matter. We can't just sit and wait for death. We have to make arrangements as soon as possible so that we won't be caught off guard. Yes, I have the same idea. The elder ancestor nodded and said, cancel the birthday banquet. Make arrangements in the residence. Also, his hand that was stroking his beard paused for a moment. He hesitated for a moment before saying, quickly send the younger generation of the Qing family away. Let them lie low for a while. If our Qing family can survive this ordeal, then let them come back. Hearing this, everyone's hearts were unusually heavy. They, who had seen too much of the world, knew that they had been careless this time. This matter didn't need to develop to this stage, but now. Everyone, you don't have to think too seriously about this matter. After all, there are still so many of us here. Things may not have reached the point of no return. Cheng Wanshan said, trying to make everyone relax. However, no one paid attention to him.
Everyone present had lived for such a long time. How could they not be able to tell whether it was a tribulation or not at this moment? I'm going to make some arrangements and prepare to set up a defensive formation in the mansion. An old man stood up and said before leaving. The others left one after another. In the end, only the Cheng clan elder and Cheng Wanshan were left in the hall. Looking at the empty hall, Cheng Wanshan's face darkened and said, "Elder ancestor."
Chapter 50-44. Yes. Cheng Wanshan replied. Now that things had come to this was the only arrangement they could make. They only hoped that the woman would not dare to come. Otherwise, this would be a battle of life and death. The fear within the Qing family made the descendants of the Qing family feel that something was amiss, especially after batches of young disciples were secretly sent away. Outside, the people who were originally prepared to attend the Qing family's birthday banquet were surprised when they heard that the banquet was cancelled. The people of various aristocratic families and forces were keenly aware of the unusual atmosphere. After all, the invitations to the Qing family's birthday banquet had been sent out long ago. Now that it was cancelled, and the reason was not explained in detail, even a 3-year-old child would not believe that there was nothing unusual about it. Some people secretly asked around and found out that the Qing family had lost 4 supreme martial artists for some unknown reason. The younger generation of the Qing family had been secretly sent away. The Qing family had provoked some extraordinary people this time, and even secretly invited some experts who were on good terms with them to the Qing family. The entire Qing family was preparing for the battle, so naturally, no one was in the mood for the birthday banquet. The Qing family spent their days in this tense and worried atmosphere. They did not know when the Qing family's disaster would befall them. They were vigilant almost every day, and did not dare to relax for a moment. They even sent people to secretly watch the city gate. Once they found someone from the outside, they would immediately report back. A few days later, Fengzhou, Mi, and the 3 children stepped into the territory of Longnan. On this day, after they entered the city, they found an inn to rest. The Qing family guard squatting at the city gate, dressed in beggar's clothes, was shocked when he saw Fengzhou. He almost did not dare to take a second look and lowered his head. After seeing them enter the inn, he quickly ran to the Qing family. Family head, family head. Cheng Wanshan, who was discussing matters with the ancestor and the others in the hall, saw the guard in beggar's clothes running in a panic. With a gloomy face, he shouted, "What are you doing in such a panic? What's the matter? If you have something to say it quickly." Seeing the ancestor and the others in the hall, the guard in beggar's clothes suppressed the panic in his heart. He swallowed his saliva and said, "Family head, it's that woman is here." "You said that woman is here." The patriarch at the main seat immediately sat up. No one noticed that his body trembled at that moment. He steadied his voice and stared at the guard dressed as a beggar. There was a hint of urgency in his voice as he asked, "How many people did they send? Where are they now? Are they heading towards our Qing clan?" "It's that woman. I saw her clearly. She's the woman in green who asked me to bring a message back." The guard clenched his fists and felt cold sweat seeping out of his palms. He took a deep breath and said, "There are a total of 5 of them. Other than the woman in green, there is a girl around 15 or 16 years old, a boy around 11 or 12 years old, and 2 younger children." Hearing this, the Qing family members looked at each other in shock. The Qing family's ancestor frowned and asked, "Are you sure? That woman didn't bring any helpers, but only a young girl and 3 children. No one else." Chapter 50-45. Hearing this, the Qing family ancestor clasped his hands behind his back and frowned as he walked around the hall. When the other supreme being cultivators of the Qing family heard this, they did not say anything and lowered their heads. No one knew what they were thinking about. Only Qing Wanshan heard this and immediately laughed. "Ancestor, I think your worries are unnecessary. She's just a woman, how strong can she be? Since she dares to come here, I'll bring my men over and destroy her as soon as possible." He thought that his words would gain the ancestor's approval. However, he did not expect the ancestor to look at him with a malicious and cold gaze. He was so shocked that he could not keep his smile and it froze on his face. "Brainless good for nothing." The Qing family ancestor scolded in a gloomy voice and snorted heavily. With a flick of his sleeve, he turned around and walked to the main seat and sat down. He stared at Qing Wanshan, who was sweating profusely, and said in a gloomy voice, "How did I let you become the master of the Qing family? You don't even have this bit of foresight. Now that the Qing family is facing a disaster, you can't escape responsibility." When these words were spoken, most of them were to vent their anger. Because the Qing family was facing a disaster, there was no way to avoid it. Now that he heard these words, he did not know that the disaster was imminent. Therefore, he was very angry, and at the same time, he was venting the anxiety and uneasiness in his heart. Being scolded in front of everyone, Qing Wanshan lowered his head and did not dare to show his dissatisfaction and anger. This was because the ancestor was the one who decided everything in the Qing family. Not to mention being scolded, even if he was killed, no one would dare to say anything. If what the guard said is true and she only brought a young girl and 3 children, then there's only one possibility. At this moment, an elder spoke up and looked at the ancestor with a serious expression, that is, her strength is so strong that she alone is enough to shake the entire Qing family. When these words were spoken, the hall fell silent. It was so quiet that even breathing could be heard. In fact, everyone present had thought of this. If the other party had brought helpers, then it would be fine. However, if she really came alone, then her strength was so strong that it was terrifying. I suddenly remembered that among the women, there's only one who has such strength at this age. One of the old men said. At this moment, his face was a little pale and he didn't seem to be in good spirits. "Who is it?" The others in the hall looked at him and asked. The old man raised his head and looked at them. After taking a deep breath, he suppressed his fluctuating emotions and said, "Empress, Phoenix Master." Hiss. This is impossible. The Qing family's ancestor sucked in a breath of cold air. He was originally sitting in the main seat, but due to his shock, he leaned back in his chair. Although it was impossible, his expression showed that he also had this guess. "Other than that person, who else do you think it could be?" The old man looked at them and sighed softly. "Who has the ability to kill 4 of us supreme being experts by himself? Who would dare to come to Longnan alone?" The reason why I couldn't find out the identity of the girl in green was because I didn't think of that person. But now that I think of it, everything matches. Chapter 50-46. The heavens want to destroy our Qing clan. The Qing clan's ancestor mumbled. The battle intent that he had been holding on to all this time disappeared at this moment. They knew that if it was really that person, then no matter how many powerhouses they invited to help, it would be useless. Unless she is merciful, our Qing family will be exterminated. Thinking of this, everyone fell silent. After a while, the Qing clan's ancestor said in a deep voice, "There is only one way." Everyone looked at him and asked, "Ancestor, what good plan do you have?" "We go and apologize and commit suicide, so that the Qing clan's descendants can have a chance to live." The Qing clan's ancestor said as he took a deep breath and stood up. He looked at them and said, "This is the only way now. If we wait for her to come, I'm afraid that no one in our Qing clan will survive." The few supreme beings listened and fell silent for a moment. If they did that, they might be able to have a chance to live for their descendants, but they would be dead. It wasn't easy to live to their age. They naturally cherished their lives, but was there any other way? Is there no other way? One of them couldn't help but ask. The Qing clan's ancestor didn't say anything. At this moment, Qing Wanshan looked at the ancestor and said, "I have an idea." Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but look at him and ask, "What idea?" Even the Qing clan's ancestor looked at him, wanting to know what else he could think of. Seeing the ancestor looking at him, Qing Wanshan had an idea and said, "Didn't the guards say that she brought a young lady and 3 children with her? We can capture the young lady and the 3 children and threaten her to leave Long Nan and not lay a hand on our Qing clan. Are you tired of dying too slowly?" The Qing clan's ancestor's face darkened and turned gloomy. "If we really do that, we will have no way out for our Qing clan's descendants." "But ancestor, even if we beg her, will she really let our Qing clan's descendants go? Won't she kill everyone in our Qing clan? If we follow my plan and succeed, our Qing family will be able to avoid this calamity and the elders won't have to die." Qing Wanshan looked at the elders as he spoke. He knew that some of them were tempted. After all, no one would be willing to die if they could live. "I agree. We can try this method," an old man said as he looked at the Qing clan's ancestor. "Wanshan is right. Even if we went to apologize, would she really let the rest of our Qing clan off? Why don't we give it a try?" "I agree as well." Another old man also spoke up. "I feel like we should go and sound her out first," an old man said. He looked at the others and said, "Didn't you say she was in the inn? Let's go take a look first. If it doesn't work, I'll take the second step." The Qing clan's ancestor sighed and said, "Since all of you have said so, then let's go take a look." Before that, let's send the experts we invited away first so that they won't be implicated. Therefore, they agreed and went to prepare. After sending off the experts invited by the manor, they let the guards lead the way and went to the inn. Chapter 50-47. When the venerated elders of the Qing family left, almost all the aristocratic families in the city were the first to receive the news. Some sent people to keep an eye on them, while others came out personally to see what was going on. Ancestor, the 3 children came with that woman. The guard who led the way looked at the 3 children sitting by the window on the first floor. The Qing family's ancestor looked over and saw the 3 children sitting there drinking water and eating snacks. They chatted from time to time and pointed at the things on the street outside with a smile. The 3 of them were indeed young as the guard said, but with one look, it was obvious that they were not children of ordinary families. They should be from a prestigious family. When they appeared, Hao-er also noticed them. After secretly sizing them up, Hao-er guessed that these people should be from the Qing family. Perhaps they noticed Hao-er's gaze elsewhere. Mu Chen and Yu-er also looked at the door. After a glance, they turned back. Yu-er asked, "Why are they staring at us? They should be from the Qing family." Mu Chen said and drank the water in his cup. He said to Yu-er, "Go in and see if Sister Mi-er is done cooking." "Oh." Yu saw her brother sending her to the kitchen and didn't say much. She responded and went to the kitchen. Because of their arrival, the people in the inn were quickly cleared out by the Qing family. In the entire inn, only Hao, and the others were still sitting at the table. Outside the inn, the Qing family's guards were guarding, not allowing anyone to come close. Children, the woman in green who came with you, do you know her identity? The Qing family's ancestor stepped forward and asked. Hearing this, Hao and Mu Qin looked at each other. Hao said, "You found this place, don't tell me you don't know." The Qing family's ancestor's eyes flashed. Seeing the two children sitting there without a trace of panic or fear and even daring to say such things to him, his heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. Sure enough, they were not children from ordinary families. It was rare for them to have such temperament at this age. In the kitchen, Yu came to Song Mi's side. Sister Mi, the Qing family is outside. My second senior brother told me to come in and tell you. As she spoke, she tiptoed to pinch a piece of meat and put it into her mouth. She even put her little finger into her mouth and licked it. When Mi heard her words, she turned around and caught a glimpse of it. She couldn't help but exclaim, "Aya, how can you eat your fingers? Did you wash your hands? You can't put your fingers in your mouth." As she spoke, she brought her to the side to wash her hands. "Are you hungry? Let me get you something to eat first." Yu beamed with smiles, and let her help her wash her hands, while said, "Just now, I washed my hands."
You can't put your fingers in your mouth even if you wash your hands. It's dirty. Mi said. After washing her hands, she picked up a bowl and chopsticks and passed some food to her. She asked, "The Qing family is here. Your two senior brothers are outside?" When they were outside, she had always remembered that she could not expose their identities. They are still sitting there. Yu took the bowl and chopsticks, then went to the small chair and sat down to eat.
Chapter 50-48. Yu chewed on the food in her mouth and said, "My senior brother told me to come in and tell you that he won't let you go out." Hearing this, Yu widened her eyes and said, "Won't let me go out? How can that be? There's only the two of them outside." "You, cough, does Madam know? I have to go take a look." After saying that, he pulled her hand away and walked out in large strides. Seeing this, Yu originally wanted to follow, but seeing that the food in her bowl was not finished and the fire was still simmering, she continued to eat while looking at the fire in the stove. In any case, with her mother around, nothing would happen. At this time, Fingjiu opened the door of the guest room on the second floor and walked out. She was wearing a simple green robe and her black hair was draped over her back. Because she had just taken a bath, she looked lazy. She walked to the railing and stood there looking down. Her gaze landed on the people of the Qing clan and asked, "Is there something you want?" Seeing her, it was almost needless to say that the Qing clan's ancestor and the others knew that it was her. Looking at her ordinary appearance in the simple green robe, they knew that she had changed her appearance. Thus, the Qing clan's ancestor took a step forward and cupped his hands to greet her. "This old man is the Qing clan's ancestor. Greetings to Madam." At this moment, because of nervousness, his heart was in a mess. Fengjiu slowly walked down the stairs and said, "I haven't gone to find you, but you came to find me." Hearing this, the hearts of the Qing clan's people trembled. They slightly lowered their heads, not daring to look at her. "Madam, this old man brought everyone of the Qing clan to apologize. We are willing to give you 10 precious treasures of our Qing clan and cripple our own cultivation. We only ask that Madam be magnanimous and spare our Qing clan this time. In the future, we will teach our descendants to do more good deeds and never forget Madam's kindness. Looking at her slowly walking down the stairs, the Qing clan's ancestor lifted his robe and knelt down, heavily kowtowing to her. The people outside the inn who were watching from afar couldn't help but be stunned when they saw this scene. Every one of them was shocked and stared in disbelief at the Qing clan's ancestor who was kowtowing. Such a character, who could shake an entire town with a casual stomp of his foot, actually knelt before an inconspicuous girl in green. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have dared to believe it was true. Fengjiu stood in front of him and looked at the old man who was kneeling with his head on the ground. His eyes flashed. For people like them, if they crippled their own cultivation, they could only wait for death. Moreover, if they crippled their own cultivation, they wouldn't have much time left to live. She had some guesses as to why they had come to the inn to beg for a way out. After all, these people were powerhouses who had lived for hundreds of years. After knowing that the 4 people sent by the Qing clan had died, they should have guessed the Qing clan's final fate. She slowly walked over to the table where the 2 children were sitting and sat down. She slowly said, "Although this world respects the strong, there is always a way out. Since you have come to beg me, I can spare your Qing family this time." But hearing her words, the Qing family's ancestor's heart was filled with joy. He couldn't help but look at her, but when he heard her pause, his heart jumped again. Chapter 50-49. Fengjiu glanced at him and said, "Hand over all of the Qing clan's belongings and move out of Longnan within 3 days." Everyone in the Qing clan was shocked to hear that. Hand over all of the Qing clan's belongings and move out of Longnan within 3 days. Without the support of the Qing clan's wealth, the descendants of the Qing clan who were used to living a luxurious life would be thrown from heaven to hell. Without the Qing clan's wealth and cultivation resources, it would be difficult for them to produce any powerful cultivators in the future. Longnan was the root of the Qing clan for generations. If they moved out of Longnan, they would have to leave their hometown and settle down somewhere else. The Qing clan of Longnan would cease to exist. Apart from that, the experts of the Qing family who were in charge of the Qing family would also find it difficult to survive. Their cultivations had been crippled, and they only had a few days left to live. The Qing family's enemies for generations would definitely not let go of this opportunity. At that time, the Qing family would most likely be doomed. The Qing clan's ancestor could not help but bow at the thought of this. He knew that the Qing clan's future was bleak. However, if he agreed, the Qing clan's descendants would have a chance to live. If he disagreed, the entire clan would be wiped out. Fengjiu took a sip of her tea and said unhurriedly, "Other than this, you have no other choice. Since you're here, you must know who I am. Even if you sent the Qing family's descendants away in advance, you should know that with my ability, I can kill them with a single word." Her words shocked everyone in the Qing clan, especially the Qing clan's ancestor. His lips trembled and his pupils constricted. His initial hesitation turned into determination after hearing her words. "I'll listen to you, madam. Please give me 3 days to arrange everything. 3 days later, I'll personally bring the Qing clan's belongings to you and leave Longnan with them." He slowly knelt down, feeling helpless in his heart. However, he also knew that she was already being magnanimous and giving the Qing family a way out. If they were in her shoes, they might not be so merciful to the Song clan. "I'll give you 3 more days. As for them, cripple their cultivations now." Fengjiu looked at the elders behind her and said calmly. The elders looked at each other and gritted their teeth. "Thank you, madam. We'll cripple our own cultivations now." With that, one of them lifted his hand and crippled his cultivation. The others followed suit and crippled their own cultivations. Crippling their cultivation was better than killing themselves. If they could find a way to prolong their lives and their remaining lifespan, perhaps, they would not have to die. With this belief in their hearts, they crippled their cultivations. As their cultivations were crippled, the originally old people became even older. They slowly sat down on the ground. They didn't even have the strength to support themselves. They could only lean on the side and gasp for breath. When she saw this, Fengjiu said, "Go back. In 3 days." "Yes. Thank you, madam." The Qing clan's ancestor replied with a trembling voice. When he got up, he saw the few people who were leaning against the wall, barely breathing. After taking a deep breath, he looked away and called out, "Men, send these elders back to the Qing clan." Clang! Suddenly, the sound of a bowl falling to the ground was heard from the kitchen. Chapter 50-50. Fengjiu raised her eyebrows when she saw me heading to the kitchen. She glanced at the Qing family members, then at the Qing family's ancestor, the elders whose cultivations were crippled, and the guards. She asked, "Where's the head of the Qing family?" The Qing family's ancestor was startled. Only then did he remember that Qing Wanshan was nowhere to be seen. He thought about the commotion in the kitchen, then thought about the missing Qing Wanshan. His face instantly turned pale, and he asked angrily, "Where's Qing Wanshan? Where did he go?" Cold sweat seeped out of his back, and his heart sank. "Please don't let it be what I'm thinking. Madam, little Seven is missing." The bowl in the kitchen fell to the floor. "I picked up some food for her when I came out just now." The kitchen window was open, so she must have been kidnapped through the window. Mi said with a face full of self-blame. It was all her fault for not looking after her properly and leaving her alone in the kitchen. Hao and Mu Chen looked at each other and went to stand beside their mother without saying anything. Fengjiu took a sip of tea, then stood up and said, "Then let's go to the Qing family to take a look. If there's no accident, she should be there." She paused, and her clear eyes turned to look at the pale Qing family's ancestor. Her lips curled into a cold smile. "Don't you think so?" The Qing family's ancestor fell to his knees. "Madam, please investigate. We didn't know. I'll go back now. If Qing Wanshan really did it, I will kill him with my own hands." "I don't think you have the guts," Fengjiu said indifferently, then glanced at him and said, "Aren't you going to lead the way?" Now that her 3 children were here, she didn't have to worry about them anymore. She believed that even if they met with danger, they would have a way to save themselves. "Yes, yes." The Qing ancestor hurriedly stood up and brought her back to the Qing residence. At this moment, he hated Qing Wanshan to the core. If it was really Qing Wanshan who did it, then it could be said that their efforts were wasted. Right now, they could only hope that he did not hurt the little girl. Otherwise, their Qing family would be buried with her. The Qing family's patriarch personally brought her to the Qing family with me, Hao, and Mu Chen following behind. However, when the Qing family's patriarch hurriedly arrived at the Qing family's main gate, he heard a shrill scream coming from inside. "Ah! Roar!" After the blood-curdling screams were heard, the roar of a beast was heard. The roar carried the pressure of a divine beast, which shocked everyone in the Qing family. Especially the guards in the front yard. They all widened their eyes and stared in shock at the seemingly innocent and harmless little girl. Who would have thought that she would be able to summon a divine beast with a smile on her face? Furthermore, she took advantage of their master's unguarded state and bit off one of his legs. Looking at the bloody leg that was thrown to the side, and then looking at the innocent little girl standing at the side, everyone felt their hair stand on end, and their hair stood on end. Before they arrived, they heard the noise inside. Fengjiu was not surprised and raised his eyebrows. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. She was Fengjiu's daughter. Was she a soft persimmon that anyone could pinch? Hao Er and Mu Qin, who were behind him, also looked calm and indifferent. Obviously, they had already expected this to happen. Only Mi Er was stunned for a moment before she heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 50-51. Qing Wanshan, who was missing a leg, was paralyzed on the ground. His complexion was deathly pale as he screamed in horror. He tried to struggle to escape, but a majestic god-beast lion was lying on his body. It stretched out its tongue and licked the blood from the corner of its mouth. More than half of its weight was pressing down on his body, making him unable to struggle free. And not far away, a leg which was bitten off was thrown to one side. All the people in the surroundings were looking at this scene in horror, but no one dared to go forward. At one side, that little girl was looking at this scene. Her little face had a smile on it. There wasn't the slightest bit of fear on her face, instead there was excitement and expectation. He didn't expect that after hastily rushing back, he would see this kind of scene. Even the old ancestor of Qing clan who had seen many things couldn't help but be dumbfounded at this moment. This, in the end, what is going on? Aunt! Seeing her mother had come, Yu Er's face blossomed with a happy smile. She softly called and trotted over to her mother. Outside, they couldn't call her mother, and could only call her aunt. Seeing this little girl running over, Fengjiu smiled, then hugging her, he asked, "How did you come here?" Yu Er hugged his neck and said, "That bad person climbed the window and kidnapped me. After he caught me here, he wanted to tie me up. So I called out my contract beast to bite him. Ah! Old ancestor, save me." At this moment, one of Qing Wanshan's arm was also bitten off. This kind of scene of being bitten off was bloody and cruel. Seeing this, everyone of Qing clan felt their scalp tingling. Qing clan's old ancestor didn't understand why Qing Wanshan, who possessed good strength, was unable to resist this god-beast. At this time, after Fengjiu shot a glance at Qing Wanshan, he raised his eyebrows and asked the little girl in his bosom, "Did you use medicine on him?" I just used a little." She stretched out her little finger and gestured. Who would have thought that he had bad intentions to catch her? Since he wanted to catch her, then she would follow along to play. In any case, her mother was preparing to deal with the people of Qing clan. Even if she let the lion bite him to death, her mother shouldn't blame her. Gotcha! Ah! With a cracking sound, another miserable shriek rang out. Everyone looked over and saw that the lion had bitten off Qing Wanshan's neck. However, the moment Qing Wanshan let out a scream, his entire spirit quickly fled. The body on the ground instantly became a corpse. After a flash of light quickly escaped from the corpse, it almost didn't think before rushing in the direction of Hao Er and Mu Qin. He thought that if his soul escaped, as long as he found a physical body, he could still live. If this physical body was one of the two boys, even this woman would not dare to do anything to him. Unexpectedly, he had overestimated his own speed. "You're courting death." Fengjiu's voice was indifferent and carried a trace of cold killing intent. Almost at the same time as her voice sounded, a ball of flame emerged from her hand and engulfed the spirit with a whoosh. Hiss. Ah. No. I don't want to die. No. Ancestor, save me. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.